Jonathan. And good evening, welcome. We are live on Skeetnet. It's on the Manx Labour Party page, and this evening, on quite an eventful day in Manx politics, we've got Sam Hamer. Good evening, Sam.
Hello.
So, tell me, I think like most of us on the Isle of Man, we're looking at a government that is on the back foot, on the defence. Embarrassed? I don't know. What's your take on it? Let's talk about the big issue first, eh?
Well, it certainly seems like a muddled response, and I think that's putting it a bit lightly. I mean, they published weeks ago what the plan was when we had COVID come back on the island, and then they seemed to throw that to the side when we thought it was back a couple of weeks ago, and now this time around they seem to have gone too far in the other direction and not locked down soon enough potentially. It just seems very, very muddled, very all over the place. I think a lot of people have lost a lot of confidence in in Howard's administration in the last couple of days, certainly. I wish they could come up with a plan and keep to it as much as they could, I guess.
Well, of course, just to paint the picture correctly, you are a serving Douglas councillor and you were elected, was it last September? I can't remember. Is that?
Yeah.
I remember it being a sunny...
I think it was October, actually.
October. It was a sunny, successful evening for two Manx Labour Party candidates. It was yourself and Devon Watson, who
yes,
I'd say got the support of the constituency. It was a campaign that was exciting, and it bore fruit for yourself and Devon. And, I mean, you've been ensconced in Douglas Council. Just tell us, what the experience has been like? Has it kind of opened your eyes a bit into local government?
Yeah, I mean, it's been an experience. It's a bit it's a bit aggravating, at least at the moment, I'd say. One of the big issues we have faced going in is neither of us are members on any committees. So we end up in a situation where our biggest, the most powerful thing we can do is to just argue with the other councillors quite a lot, and to try and ask, pointed questions in council meetings, and learn as much about the procedure as we can. But unfortunately, it's been a bit of a uphill battle because we don't have any power in the committees, which is a bit annoying.
But positively, you're not sitting on any fence. You don't have to satisfy courts, as it were. So you can examine, scrutinise, and challenge what's faced in front of you. And I'm sure, like a lot of people who weren't privy to what goes on inside a council or commissioners, that the power that is exonerated in there, that is exercised, is remarkable, isn't it? The amount of budget that they've got to handle, the responsibility, it's a lot more than people think.
Certainly in Douglas, it's quite sizable. I know that there's some local authorities with that don't have nearly as much budget as we do, but also again we're responsible for a lot more than other local authorities. Yes, I would say we have done that. We have scrutinised as much as we can. We've certainly got into quite heated debates in the council chamber various times. We've asked the questions that we've gone there to ask. I'd say we've done that. I think we will continue to do that, and hopefully be able to push a lot harder once we're in again, touch wood, and we can get ourselves on some of the committees. I think we'd be able to actually push forward on some of the things we were elected to do.
Well, let's look at this, because you and Devon were elected, and it was a big success because you were standing as Manx Labour Party candidates. And I'm pleased to say that I've noted on social media that you've made an announcement today. So if you just furnish the audience with that, and we welcome everyone that's watching tonight. If you've got any comments or anything you want to say, just put them in the box or give us a thumbs up and subscribe, share, and so forth. So tell me, today you're putting your name up for business again.
Oh, actually, that wasn't today, Jed. That was a couple of days ago. I think you've gotten confused on the days, but yes, no, I'm putting my name forward again.
Yeah.
I think I owe it to the constituents. I've only been in this role for a couple of months, and as of yet, the only thing I have concretely achieved is annoying other councillors. So for me to actually fulfil the what I said I would fight for, I really do need to put my name forward again and to continue this fight. Really.
Well, that is most commendable, and I think it's a good opportunity to send the message out to anyone that's watching. How do they go about taking part in an election campaign and becoming a councillor or commissioner? What's the process?
Okay. So if you are interested in becoming a commissioner or a councillor, I believe it can differ slightly between local authorities, but I can tell you what you do in Douglas anyway. I may get the order wrong here, so I should probably check before I keep talking, but I'll say it first, and then I'll correct myself if it turns out I'm wrong. You announce your intention to run. You give proof that you have publicly declared your intention to the town hall, at which point you will receive a copy of the electoral roll for you to. You have to sign a lot of things to get a copy of that, obviously, which you can then use to try and start talking to your neighbours and try and get support. You then need to get a piece of paper with 10 electors on it, who's people near you who say, yes, this guy is an all right guy, I would trust him as a councillor. And they sign the piece of paper, and you take it back to the town hall. And once you have those 10 electors, that's it. You are then on the. You're then eligible to be voted in, and then at that point starts the long, arduous process of trying to see as many people as physically possible before the election, and try and persuade them to give you their vote.
So tell me, it's going to be a different ward, isn't it? Because I think the Douglas ward that you're currently ensconced is transforming into something else, shall I say?
Yes. So the wards are being redrawn to match the Tynwald. I'm going to forget the name now. It's not districts. The Tynwald. I'm going to say districts anyway, even though it's not districts.
Constituency.
Well, I could say constituency.
Okay.
But no, it's like
it's a ward, isn't
anyway,
it? It's a ward, I think. It's a Douglas ward.
Sure.
That's it.
So we're redrawing the wards to match what they are in Tynwald, because it causes too much confusion to the electorate having wards in Douglas that are different from the Tynwald constituents and the other advantage of redrawing them is that it means that councillors are able to get into better relationships with their counterparts in Tynwald and hopefully be able to drive policy that helps the area more. Because the issue we have at the moment is, and as I say issue, is I have my MHK is different from Devon's MHK, despite the fact that we are the same ward. If he wants to talk to his MHK, it is different from mine. Or I say MHKs, I guess.
Well, it's absolutely vital that the MHKs who are in the top office, if you like, don't get wrapped up in constituency matters that can be sorted out at the Douglas Council or Commissioner level right across the island, and that is wrong. And we've seen that on so many occasions where so much parliamentary time has been wasted with absolute rubbish, when we've got big national issues to deal with. So it's important that the local councillors can engage directly with people in their neighbourhood and understand the concerns of what is actually on the doorstep. And it's these things that have got to be dealt with. They've got to be dealt with sympathetically and understood. And yet that cannot go up to a national level. And this is the importance of serving on a local level. It's absolutely vital, isn't it, Sam?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. In fact, I think that it's always very important to have a good, strong local authority who's able to advocate for its citizens and be able to do the things that need to happen locally. Local authorities are much closer to the citizens usually than the MHKs. They know what's going on in the local area, and so it's always important for local authorities to be able to have the power to do what needs to happen locally, and also to convey that information higher up the chain, as it were, if it's needed. One thing I would push back on though is while I agree that it's good for Tynwald to concentrate on the larger national issues, I would. One thing I highly disagree with is the amount of power the Department of Infrastructure has over local authorities, which I would be much happier in some instances if Tynwald were to be in control of us rather than through the Department of Infrastructure. Because although I do agree that you don't want Tynwald wasting their time very often, we are an elected body, as is Tynwald, and it does sometimes get frustrating as a councillor the amount of power the unelected body of the Department of Infrastructure has.
Absolutely, and
so that's the only thing I'd push back on there.
We've not just seen it there; we've seen it on the issue regarding planning, where the planning applications and approvals are put through at a local level, and quite often the decision can be overturned at a completely different office, which makes your efforts seem a little bit wasted. But I think it's important to say at this time that when you're a Douglas councillor and you're with the people around you that have been elected, is that you're actually representing, I think it's about 20,000 people, isn't it? I think that's the population of Douglas. I'm not 100%, and I'm not going to put you on the spot, but this gives you and your fellow councillors a vehicle to make challenges at national level. So this is like in relation to housing. So for instance, what you see on the housing front in Douglas, which is probably the most congested area for apartments, maybe substandard accommodation, maybe where there's unscrupulous landlords exercising all kinds of bad things, you could actually be a vehicle to make changes and influence those who are in power.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the what's a core issue for both me, Devon, and the Labour Party, is doing what we can to solve this housing crisis that we find ourselves in, and certainly there are powers that the council have that there's powers that they have that they are not necessarily making the best use of. I will put it that way. Certainly, I believe there's more they can do to pressure. First of all, pressure in various places when it comes to planning permission and our recommendations with that, when it comes to how we deal with dilapidated buildings, and certainly when it comes to setting a good example when it comes to public sector housing, and indeed putting pressure on private landlords who are in Douglas themselves. Like, I feel that there are certain powers that could be used that I would like to try and push for them to be used more, because certainly we do find ourselves in a crisis at the moment when it comes to housing, and I still don't think there's enough politicians who quite understand that that's the case. who quite realise just how many other social issues boil down to a lack of a coherent housing strategy.
I think you've really struck on a point there, and you mentioned that there is a housing crisis on the Isle of Man, and I don't think that you can really describe it in any other way, where we've got a lack of public sector housing development. We've got a lack of opportunities for people to get on the housing ladder. We've got a situation where we've got many thousands of people who are in an income bracket where they're trapped in rental accommodation, and they're not able to afford, say, a 20% deposit or a 15% deposit that the banks are asking now for a mortgage. It's completely unrealistic. And then...
Absolutely, yeah.
And then we've got this scenario where we've got these houses that are being built on green land, on farmers' fields, around the island. There's no control over, how energy efficient they are or what the traffic management is around them. And yet these are being sold for investment.
There's meant to be, but certainly there's, there's meant to be, but quite often you'll find that the green strategy is put to one side. I wouldn't say ignored. I don't think that's necessarily fair, but you find quite often that the Isle of Man government's green strategy is kind of sidelined with the in the planning application process for these things.
It's anonymous, really. But tell me, Sam, what are your thoughts? What are the solutions? What can we do?
Well, to me, it really is. It is a case of having politicians who care more about that. Because the fact is, the Isle of Man does actually have the Isle of Man government has laws when it comes to planning applications, like taking the environment into account, and yet more often than not, they just will kind of ignore it. So I mean, there's more legislation that we could make. We could certainly make the environment more of a factor when it comes to these things, in making these decisions. But the big issue is, I don't really feel that we're taking into account the strategy that already exists, the legislation that already exists. So to me, it really is a case of watch which politicians actually seem to care about this type of thing, and keep voting them in and vote out the ones who don't seem to care.
Well, Sam, I think like many of us, we can't really detect anyone jumping from the rooftops about this. Now, we've actually got a question in from Mr. Mike Wilson. You can't see this. Maybe you can see it on your Facebook feed if you've got it on the screen close to you. But he's asking energy efficiency of new builds. I think there's a strong motivation to resolve this. However, when, it remains to be seen. And I think it's like many of us, there's no existence of grants for solar energy or insulating your home or any other means really to make your domestic area more efficient. It's something that is really, really lacking. And I often wonder, is this because we've got to pay off the Manx Utilities debt that's obviously still running into millions and millions?
I don't know. What question are you really asking there? Are you asking? Are you asking whether I believe that the reason that grants aren't being offered is because we are spending too much money propping up Manx Utilities? Is that what you're?
I think Mike is getting to the point where the energy efficiency of new builds, is it in existence? Is there any strict controls? Are we doing the best we can?
I don't think so. No. There's as I say, there's certainly a strategy to make new builds more energy efficient. There's certainly a strategy to build greener and more environmentally friendly and everything else, but it's just not being followed. It's not a case of the strategy not being there. It's a case of it just not being followed.
we thank Mike. He's just added some clarification here. He's not talking about grants, but it's something which I'm sure we're aware of. Air source heat pumps aren't being fitted. Instead, it's fossil fuel boilers, which are featuring in all the new builds. I'd like to know what the proportion is between gas and oil on that front, because we know that the Manx gas, issue has caused a lot of focus recently. It seems to be a bit of a dog's dinner. It seems to be something that could have been handled better by the Isle of Man government, and that was actually admitted by Chris Thomas. You may have seen that in his social feeds. But yeah, so are we getting really the best out of our builds? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Is it like they've almost seen that the finish line is in sight and they're trying to get all this stuff passed through before the election in 2021 in September?
Sorry, I guess I don't. I'm not sure what question you're asking. Are we doing the best we can when it comes to environmental issues? Definitely not. When it comes to actually when it comes to fitting more environmentally friendly sources of heat.
I'll ask you straight. I'll ask you straight.
Sorry.
Should it be a requirement that all new builds have green energy considerations that are reasonable but effective?
Yes, but I would say that the planning is meant to already take that into account. But they don't tend to. They don't tend to. So I believe that there is already a strategy in place when they're meant to take environmental factors into account, and they're meant to care about the impact of these things. They just don't. They don't do it enough. So I wouldn't be against necessarily legislation that said that they absolutely full stop have to have these new greener energies. In fact, as a party, we are pushing for a whole load of environmentally friendly solutions. We want to push on the green economy, and we have a whole Green New Deal plan. But so I'm not against doing that at all. But the issue you would run into again is while you're saying take the environment into account, you leave a lot of interpretation in how much you take it into account. For instance, if it will if it will cause the build to be twice as expensive, is it do we care more about the environment than we do about the affordable? You have all sorts of issues like that come up. So I really think it's a case of making sure, as I said, that the people who are have the power to make these decisions actually do care about the environment and do value the moving towards more energy efficient and more environmentally friendly solutions.
I think it really is top level government decisions, and they've got to give everyone the most incentive as possible to take on these green advantages, and we're simply not seeing
I don't disagree.
That, are we?
I mean, this is going to potentially be rather controversial, but the aim should always be to put fossil fuel businesses out of business.
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, we can't run things like that anymore.
Well,
so the incentive should always be moving away from those things.
Take for instance,
it's
today's news about Volvo. Volvo vehicles are going to be purely electric by 2030, and really by 2025 it's only going to be electric and certain forms of hybrids, which is a great stance to take. And if we could adopt that culture, that philosophy on the Isle of Man, it would just be so quick to get to that target, which was posted at 2050. Laurie Hooper, very commendably, he said, look, we need to make it 2035 before we're carbon neutral in a serious way. And you must have other thoughts about this. I mean, public transport is always something which comes to head, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I totally I agree with what you're saying there. Yeah, I mean, ideally, we should already be well on our way to moving towards electric vehicles on the island. There's no reason for more of us not be driving them. There's no reason there aren't charge points all around the place. But ultimately, even electric vehicles are a stepping stone, because at the end of the day, we do need to get used to using public transport again. We really do. Even if we all move to electric vehicles tomorrow, we still wouldn't be cutting our emissions enough to like stop calamity. Like we do need to move towards public transport. And me, much like my sorry, I won't say that. Me, I personally would always advocate for cheaper, ideally free public transport, but I think we are potentially far away from that. I know that the party has made a commitment to push for a trial of that. But I'd always push to incentivizing people using public transport.
But that's where we need further scrutiny of the economic model that is bus fanning, that is the Department of Infrastructure, because this is something which has never been debated in Tynwald. The massive spend on vehicles and whatever direction they're going in has never been discussed, and it just seems to be something chaotic and random, and you read about it in a headline and wham bam, thank you man, we've got 68 new minibuses on order. But I've just got another question coming in, and I'll read this out, so just bear with me, Sam. So, right, does the Isle of Man need to do anything at all on the basis that electric vehicles, ASHP and other green technologies eventually be forced upon us? We won't be able to buy an oil boiler in 10 years, nor a new ICE. So I forgive me, I'm not quite sure of what the abbreviations are, but I do get the gist of that. The UK basically have got a benchmark, a milestone, that 2030 is going to be the time when there is going to be no sale of carbon emitting vehicles, and that is only 9 years away. It's not too far. So does the Isle of Man have to take their steer themselves? Well, what's your take on that? Should we be taking the lead and setting an example?
It's a good question, because I agree. Ultimately, we will be dragged into a new green economy, whether we like it or not, assuming the rest of the world are able to push through. But it's certainly within our interest to get ahead of the curve on this. I mean, it's always better for countries that like get ahead of these things. We know that we have to turn into a new green economy. Like the world knows this. So the sooner we're able to to get ahead of everyone else, the more money there is to be made. I mean, being honest here, like if we can, if we're able to start turning into green technology now, and start pushing these things, then we could become a market leader in a lot of these areas. But also fundamentally, we have to accept that we have done our fair share of using these fossil fuels and causing this damage to the environment. And in a strictly moral level, I think we do need to play our part in trying to put it right as well. I mean, my biggest fear is that, and this is going a bit outside the realms of local politics.
Come on, Sam, go outside the realms.
My biggest fear is that the real horrific issues of global warming are going to be felt hardest by the populations of the world who've actually done the least damage to the climate. Which is just a very difficult thing to kind of accept morally.
Well, I think that's the nature of the society that we live in. And
no, it's true.
And it's really difficult, but I think it's fair to say that our government, the people we voted into the House of Keys, I think you've got to look at the track record for the past 5 years. And let's try and think, where can they hang their hat on something constructive that they've done for the environment? At the moment, I'm just seeing a sequence of non-events.
Well, yeah, I mean, they got Professor Curran to make all those recommendations that they've just kind of ignored. They've done a lot of talking. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with talking. I mean, politicians are always going to do a lot of talking, but at the end of the day, if all you do is sit there and talk about, oh, you know, this is something we really need to do something about, this is something we really need to do something about, and then they do studies into what to do, and then they don't follow those studies, and they just continue to sit there being like, oh, we need to do something about this, and they're not really doing anything.
But Sam, I mean, you live in Douglas, don't you? And so you can just look out over Douglas Bay when the conditions are right, and you see this huge wind farm, and it's only just beyond 12 miles away, out of our national waters. And we don't even have a piece of that. We don't even have a windmill on the island that generates electricity, really, in the public concern for the public good. We're not even a gram of seriousness has been, used on tackling this issue at all. And now it's just been pushed and pushed and pushed, maybe till September, till the new gang get elected.
Well, and actually, I made a tweet to this effect. That has been the policy of every government since I've been born, has been leave it to the next administration, and it looks like we're just doing it again. Like that always seems to be what happens. Is it's always someone else's issue, and eventually it will fall on. I mean, I hope not, but I suspect eventually it will fall on my generation and the generation after me to do something about it, and let's hope it's not too late at that point.
Well, I think the events certainly this weekend will focus the Manx public attention on local politics, and with the news, for instance, today, where we've got vaccines being thrown in the bin.
Yes, I saw that.
Could you believe that? Vaccines are thrown in the bin when they could have been used to, kind of just boost us up the ladder a little bit, because we seem to be lagging behind in innovation, creativity and thought, energy, action, and actually making a difference. What's your take on that?
I think there's always going to be a certain amount of wastage with any kind of government initiative. Stuff like that does happen, but certainly when these are these are coveted items, like our whole COVID strategy is now based around the giving out of these vaccines. It does seem like a bit of a my dad would say a punch in the teeth. I'm not entirely sure what else you'd say. To find that there's just 15 of these thrown away, or however many it was. I can't remember whether it was 10 or 15. But anyway, I think it's kind of just it symbolizes just how all over the place their strategy has been for the last couple of days. In all honesty, is just I don't know. It seems to have just descended into chaos recently, and I really take these vaccines that they've thrown away whilst we're trying to get everyone vaccinated to really be like a symbol of a bigger issue. Because we need to get everyone vaccinated. I mean that is the exit strategy at the moment, isn't it? So it's I don't know what to say. It's a terrible thing to have happened, and it's very symbolic, I feel, of a wider administrative issue.
I'll tell you what was symbolic today, and I'm sure anyone that's viewing will have sensed this if they saw the press conference. And it was where there was a little bit of a diversion about the origin of the latest outbreak. And it was mentioned by one of the parties on the screen to say that it may not be related to the steam packet. This is the weakness that was exposed in the last few weeks. And really that...
Oh, I must have missed that.
And that really did speak volumes, because that showed me that there is fear in the system, that there's fear that mistakes have been made on what is the most obvious front the most obvious weakness. It was going to be our borders that were exposed, and I just picked up on that, and I'm sure many people will have, that it's a case of, hang on, is the controller in control? But that's what struck me today.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the fear. Like, I don't have issue with the council ministers or the government in general, like having a fear of getting things wrong. Like, I feel a healthy fear is perfectly fine. But I mean, certainly the issue seems to be that the impression they've given the public is that they've lost the plot. And I think that that's true across the board. I mean, I've been keeping an eye on my Twitter feed on and off today. I did listen to the announcement. I didn't listen to all the questions because I was at work at the time, and there's only so much listening to the chief minister I can sneakily get away with whilst at work. But certainly I can see from people across the political spectrum who believe the government have lost the plot. People who I vehemently disagree with, and people who I have a lot of respect for. All of them seem to think that the government's lost the plot over this.
I think it's worthy to mention that it's nearly a year ago where things were kicking off in Europe. They were happening around the world, and the television screens were covering all kinds of horrific scenes from hospitals in Spain and Italy, and the imagery that we had from China, and it was blindingly obvious what the risks were, going to be to the Isle of Man. And it was blindingly obvious that to anyone, the Isle of Man was in this fantastic position where it was surrounded by this beautiful rough sea, the Irish Sea, and we had control of our borders. And yet, I think it was only until it was the Manx Labour Party, there was a submission made to Isle of Man newspapers, and it was printed, I think it was round about the 12th or 13th of March, to say, look, and this was a message to cry out to the Isle of Man government to close the borders, even if it was just for a temporary measure, just to assimilate and see what was going on. And yet, even then, when it became so obvious and the public were crying out, it was so obvious to see, it still took the Quayle administration 10 days to actually pull the drawbridge up. And I think that set the tone right for some time.
Sure. I mean, I'm a big advocate of freedom of movement as a general rule. But I also agreed, certainly at the beginning of this outbreak, that we needed to shut our borders and shut them quickly, temporarily, and then keep an eye on the situation. I know from personal experience that we were both pretty frustrated at the time, Jed, about the lack of any kind of action from government. I remember, in fact, the chief minister going on a rant about how all these fearmongers were saying that it was probably on the island, they don't know what they're talking about, and then making an announcement 3 hours later that we had to go into isolation because it was all like going to hell, basically. So yeah, I think that is kind of symbolic. They've always been on a bit of a back foot, and thank God, as you say, thank God for the Irish Sea that's there, and I mean. There's a lot of very hard-working people in government, I think, have done a very good job on this, and I actually do think it could have been a lot worse. And I'm thankful for the as you say, the Irish Sea being there to protect us, and for those hard-working people in government. But certainly, when it comes to the people at the top, it does just seem to be a lot of confusion, a lot of toing and froing without really knowing what direction to go into.
Well, I think we can be grateful that we had a massive army of civil service backup who were there to support those people that are involved in the private sector. They've got their own businesses, who've had a year where they're under severe pressure, and fair enough. there's been a grants system, there's been assistance that has been facilitated, but that had to be, because that element of our economy has to be kept alive. And without that, we would be absolutely screwed. And there's going to be, big challenges ahead. I mean, take, for instance, we'll just bounce back into being Douglas Councillor, Sam. Okay,
sure.
So we've got Douglas Town Centre, we've got the High Street, and we've got a number of shop frontages that ain't going to be filled with nice clothes and goods for people to, window shop, if you like. So what are we going to do with those? What's going to happen?
I mean, in the short term, we can try and look into reducing business rates to try and entice shops to take over. In instances where we're reducing rates and reducing rent if it's a building that we own. But fundamentally, that is just, and this again. Sorry, I know you just pulled me back into being a councillor, and I am going to continue. I will answer this as a councillor, but again, this is just slowing down. Like what I feel is an inevitable move away from the town centres being like big shopping centres anyway. I think that people do use the internet for things, and as much as I do try and buy locally whenever I can, I also do a lot of shopping on the internet, and I think that that we really need to help businesses. Survive as long as possible, look after their workers, and try and find new markets that they can explore. Like these shops that are disappearing are probably not coming back, and that's just something that's unfortunately you can't fight the tides on that. So to me, really, we need to be enticing new types of businesses to take their place, and to try and look into turning like town centres and the shopping streets into more like a experience industry and service industry, and like communal areas and community. Sorry, I say communal areas. I mean like community areas. To me, that's really that's the only future there that you can really have in those areas. Like as much as I think we should support the businesses that are there currently, I don't think we can entice the same type of businesses back.
I think you've hit the nail absolutely on the head, and I think if you look back to Douglas Town Centre, okay, and we look back over the years, and everyone would love to see retail units there. We can look through rose-tinted spectacles at the past, but in the past we had delicatessens, we had cars running up and down Strand Street, we had trams going up and down Victoria Street, and those have gone for a reason, because trends and times have changed. So would it be feasible, say, and this is like really taking the bull by the horns, is actually looking the way the town is designed and looking at these vacant spaces that may never be returned to your standard retail unit, and say, look, let's turn them into townhouses, let's make them affordable housing, let's turn them into public housing, and then put a population in there.
That's the other solution.
Put a population in there and have the offices that are now redundant because people are working from home turn this into like a community where people live, and you could have the things they need. So it's like small shops, it's coffee houses, it's little bars and restaurants. I know that sounds a little bit twee, and maybe it's quite an ambitious vision, but is there some way those landlords could be converted into selling their properties?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd certainly look into that. Like, I think that is the other thing that should be looked into, is trying to take these buildings. That makes sense, like I'm going to seize them. No, try to make use of these buildings to turn them into like residences. What it would certainly help as well, if you think about it that way. It would help with our green initiatives as well, because people wouldn't have to commute if they can walk everywhere. some of the apartments above Strand Street, there's a few of them still. They are pretty abysmal, but with a bit of I really feel with a bit of love and care, you could make some really nice apartments around there, and you could make some nice communal areas, and it's nice to have more like greenery and whatnot in Strand Street as well. Like I feel you could really build up that area. I agree. If you can build residences there as well as offices, as you say, if there's any need for offices anymore. Yeah, I agree with that. But fundamentally, as I say, while we should always support the businesses that are there as much as we can, and I do advocate for doing that, fundamentally, the town centre is going to change anyway.
I think that's absolutely a valuable comment
just to bring it back.
And maybe the Manx Labour Party strategy will encompass, that way of thinking, and it's been quite exciting. You've been involved with the party for a number of years, and you've seen a big growth in membership. Where do you see the way ahead? I mean, just to finish off, our session tonight, because we've gone up to 45 minutes. What's going to happen with party politics, and what's going to happen with the local elections, and what would you like to see in September 21?
Well, we'll see what happens with party politics, I guess. I think that one of the great advantages of party politics, and I will admit that I wasn't sold on it for quite a while, even after I joined the Manx Labour Party. I've always been one of those people on the Isle of Man who's been a bit sceptical about party politics as a thing. But one thing that's I've really been sold on is it allows for a alternative alternative ways of looking at things to exist within our system, almost as if like think tanks existing, and it allows for an opposition to exist in party form, even when there isn't really an opposition in government. And I find that quite useful. I am sold on party politics as being a good thing for the island, and hopefully the upcoming elections will show that the country agrees with us. Or agrees that party politics is a good thing. I mean, we have a good relationship with the other political parties on the island for that reason, because I think we all see ourselves as creating almost a grassroots opposition party to the current government, whatever that happens to be, because there isn't any opposition in government, as we know. So yeah, hopefully the electorate agrees. What I would like to see is for us to gain more seats. I'd like to see our friends who are like-minded gaining seats, even if they aren't necessarily members of the Manx Labour Party. It's always good to have fellow progressive thinking people in politics. So I'd like to see more like-minded people win in the local authority elections, and hopefully in the general. Vote for Fenella, Devon, Gareth, and Sarah.
Well, I think there's no question about it that we've talked about the housing crisis, and in some ways I think crisis is an understatement for what's happening on the Isle of Man. We've talked about a government that is seriously on the back foot now after the developments today, and I think it's not just about the Manx Labour Party. It's about getting involved in politics. It's about representing people. It's about pushing that voice forward, because we've really got some work to do on the Isle of Man, haven't we?
Absolutely. In fact, if I could just say quickly that I think one of the issues that I think the Labour parties one of the issues that the government have had over the last couple of days is something that I think the Manx Labour Party is very good at, and that is the fact that their whole plan of them giving us information saying, oh, it would probably be good if people stopped. People did isolate. It would probably be good if people stopped going out. Really showed a complete lack of understanding when it came to working people. They seem to be under the impression that the majority of the population could choose not to go into work. Because I don't know what they most of us don't have a choice on that. Like if they think we should stay at home to stop spread of the virus, I mean, we're entirely on the whims of whether our employers want to do that or not. So it's it showed a real misunderstanding of the situation that most people are in. And I think that is one thing, obviously, as a Labour Party, clues us in the name, we're very good at understanding the needs of what everyday people want, and how they work and what they require from a government, and they missed the mark on this.
I think it's fair to say that it exposed a gaping hole of understanding. So, Sam, thank you so much for taking part tonight, and thank you for those who contributed in the comments and followed us broadcasting. Just a message, if anyone is out there that'd like to get involved in the Manx Labour Party, Manx Labour Party is found on the website.com, through the Facebook page, but we'd also encourage that other political parties are followed too. We've got the Green Party and Liberal Vannin, and we've got our friends out in McVannin and beyond. So I think anyone out there taking an interest in politics is absolutely valuable. So please share, subscribe, join in, and we'll have another session soon, no doubt, Sam. So thank you so much for your time.
Yes, no, I would love to come on again, Jed. I'll come on as whenever I'm able to fit it into my schedule.
Okay. Well, we could have a bit of a time on our hands for the next 3 weeks, but it's been lovely.
Yeah.
A really, really good chat there, Sam. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Anyone who wants to talk to me, feel free to contact me through my Facebook page or through Twitter, or I've got a phone here, and my phone number's up there if you want to talk to me in any other way. It's I'm always happy to chat.
Top man. Thank you.